Today's lesson is a review on rational number operations. So remember that rational numbers are signed, decimals, and fractions. The reason we call them rational is because they have that symbol in the front, a positive or a negative, and they can be written as a fraction or a decimal. They can also be whole numbers, which would be like an integer, which our lesson yesterday fell over. So today we're going to talk about evaluating rational numbers, and we're really just going to do multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting of fractions and decimals. This is all a review. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these two numbers and I'm going to circle them. One is positive and one is negative. So same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. So it's a subtraction problem. 6.4 minus 4.6. I'm going to borrow. 14 minus 6 is 8. Bring my decimals straight down. Notice I line up the decimals when I add or subtract decimals. I line them straight up. 5 minus 4 is 1. And then I need to look back at my problem. Same signs add and keep. Different signs subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number. That is negative. My next example has three numbers. I have a negative 2.1. I have a double negative right here, and then I have a negative 6.1. I remember that when I have two negatives together, I turn those into a great big giant plus. So I'm going to focus on these two numbers first. Same signs add and keep or different signs subtract. One is negative, one is positive, so that is a subtraction problem. 7.6 minus 2.1. Line up my decimals. 6 minus 1 is 5. Drive my decimal straight down. 7 minus 2 is 5. Keep the sign of the bigger number. Well, the bigger number happens to be positive. And then I'm going to bring this number over. Minus 6.1. Same signs add and keep or different signs subtract. This is a subtraction problem. 6.1 minus 5.5. When I borrow, 11 minus 5 is 6. 5 minus 5 is 0. And then I have to go back to my problem. Keep the sign of the bigger number, negative. All right. I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to let you do that. So the next example we have is with fractions. I have two with fractions. So the rule about adding or subtracting fractions is that you have to have a common denominator, meaning the bottom number has to be the same. So when I look at the two examples that I have, neither of them have a common denominator. I have negative 2 over 3 plus 1 over 7. So the first thing I need to do is find a common denominator. 3 times 7 is 21. I multiplied this by 7. I multiplied this by 3. Negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. Plus 1 times 3 is 3. Are the signs the same or are they different? They are different, so it's a subtraction problem. 14 minus 3 is 11 all over 21. Keep the sign of the bigger number. You'll notice that the bigger number is negative. So my final answer is negative 11 over 21. Can I reduce that? No, because 11 is prime and 11 does not divide 21 nicely. Example number 5. I have an 8 and a 2. Common denominator will be an 8. I don't change the first fraction at all. The second fraction, I multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 4. That gives me 4 over 8. It's a subtraction problem. Different signs, subtract. 7 minus 4 is 3 over 8. Keep the sign of the bigger number. The bigger number is positive. So today we're just really talking about the rules. Tomorrow we're going to focus on how to put these into a calculator. Number 6, example number 6, I'm multiplying three numbers together. Well, the first thing I want to do is count the number of negatives. There is one negative, which is odd, which means that my final answer will be negative. So I'm going to keep that in mind, and I'm going to ignore the decimals. I have 31 times 54. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. Bring a 0 down. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15. Add them up. 4, 7, 6, 1. Count my decimal places to the right. You will notice that there is 1, 2 decimal places to the right. So I need to have 1, 2 decimal places in my answer. So I have 16.74. Now I'm going to multiply that by the 5.6. 6 times 4 is 24. 42 plus 2 is 44. 36 plus 4 is 40. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 4 is 10. Bring down a 0. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 7 is 35. 36, 37. 30 plus 3 is 33, and 5, 6, 7, 8. Add them up. How many total decimals do I have to the right? 3. I need to make sure that I have 3 in my final answer, and I need to make sure that it's negative. So my final answer is negative 93.744. Can you do this on a calculator? Absolutely. I just want to remind you of things that you know. Number 1, count the number of negatives. Number 2, ignore the decimals. Know that the number of decimal places to the right has to be the same in your final answer. Okay? All right, so let's look at number 7. Number 7 is 2 integers multiplied by a fraction. So I'm going to break this up, and I'm going to do the negative 8 times 4 first, and that is negative 32. And then I'm going to write that as negative 32 over 1 times negative 7 over 4. I have 2 negatives, which is even. And because it is even, I know that my final answer is going to be positive. So I could multiply straight across, but I'm going to cross reduce here. 4 will go into itself 1 time. 4 will go into 32 8 times. 8 times 7 is 56. And I know that my answer is positive. All right, find the quotient. That means divide. I've said this a million times, but I'll say it again. Remember, the cowboy rides the horse. The cowboy goes in the house. The horse goes outside. I know that my final answer is going to be negative because I only have 1 negative. And then I want to remember that I never divide by decimals. I always turn those into whole numbers. So does 72 go into 18? No, it does not. But does 72 go into 180? It sure does. 144 times. I'm going to add another 0. 0. 180 minus 44 is 36. Does 72 go into 36? It sure does. 5 times. So my final answer is negative 0.25. I'm going to set up the next one. 4.8 on the inside, 2 on the outside. A negative divided by a negative, my final answer will be positive. 2 goes into 4 2 times. Drive my decimal upstairs. 2 goes into 8 4 times. My final answer, 2.4. All right, we're just going to talk. These are order of operations, so I have multiple steps going on here. We're just going to talk about what's happening and talk about order of operations. I have to do multiply or divide before I do add or subtract. And remember, I do it in the order it appears. So this says 4.55 minus 1.8 plus the product of So I have to do the 5.9 times 4.4 first. So I'm going to use a calculator. 5.9 times 4.4 is 25.96. So I have 4.5 minus 1.8 plus 25.96. Now I can look at these as same signs add and keep or different signs subtract. They're different, so 4.55 minus 1.8 equals 2.75 plus 25.96 equals 28.71. Again, can you use a calculator? Absolutely. I just want you to remember some of the rules. When I look at this next example, I want to remind you that we turn all all mixed numbers into improper fractions. So this really looks like 5/3 plus 1/3, which is 6/3. And then 18 plus 5 is 23 over 6 plus 7 over 2. So let's look at this and find a common denominator. So common denominator could be 6. So I'm going to keep 23 over 6 plus, when I turn this bottom number into a 6, I did that by multiplying by 3. So that becomes 21 over 6. 23 plus 21 is 44 over 6. I'm going to turn this into a denominator of 6. 12 over 6, add them together, equals 56 over 6. They can both be divided by 2. That becomes 28 over 3. All right, I have 2 more examples. We're just going to do one of them, evaluating. Remember, when you evaluate, you substitute in a value. So wherever I see the letter X, I'm going to substitute in 3/2, and wherever I see the letter Y, I'm going to substitute in 1. So this becomes 6 plus 2 times the quantity, 1 plus 3/2. Well, I have to do what's inside the parentheses first. So I have 6 plus 2 times the quantity, 1 and 3/2. When I turn that into a mixed number or an improper fraction, turns into 5/2. And then I have to take care of the multiplication before I do addition. 6 plus 10 over 2, which is the same thing as 6 plus 5, equals 11. So your homework today is really a lot of calculator business, really. You do have 4 word problems in it, but it shouldn't take you very long. The word problems are very simple, and you can use your calculator. I just want to make sure that you show your work on the word problems, and you are going to have to follow order of operations. You're going to have to remember that parentheses comes before adding or subtracting, before multiplying and dividing, and that you have to multiply and divide before you add or subtract. Okay? Good luck.